Very good. Hey guys, good to see y'all again. Everybody, welcome to the June edition of the Trust Tech Chat. Today we're going to talk on one of our favorite subjects, which is uh, telephone and communications. We're going to talk a little bit about, as we always do, how to try to have a positive impact on our customers' business through the technology that we can bring to them and deliver to them. We're going to talk a little bit about today about helping clients understand how people want to communicate with businesses in a very different way than maybe traditionally thought. Telephone is one way of communicating, but there's a lot of other ways out there that people want to communicate with businesses today, and we're going to talk about how to bring some of those other technologies into your communication scheme a little bit. We're going to talk about how currently what you're doing, if it's limited to the telephone, maybe having a slightly negative impact on your business and business growth. And we're going to talk about subject you'll hear us refer to it time to time, unified communications as a service. UCaaS, you may hear us refer to that. So I'll go ahead and explain the acronym there. But let's talk a little bit about kind of the current state of things for many businesses, kind of where people are living today, where people have been living in their communications with clients, customers throughout the time. And Mac, you want to kind of start that out and kind of draw us a picture of what does it look like out there for a lot of people in their communications?
We've certainly had a lot of changes, especially with the recent state of the world being the pandemic and then also the weather events we're having. But still, a lot of customers have what we call traditional phone systems. They're located in a closet somewhere collecting cobwebs and dust, and the phones sitting on the desk are just taking up real estate. Half the buttons don't work, or if sometimes they're still paper labeled, they're definitely not labeled correctly with 5 layers of whiteout as people have moved position. But there's still a lot of customers that have those traditional phone systems out there.
Yep, yep. And again, phone systems are great. They're the lifeblood of many businesses out there. That's the primary way people communicate with their clients. Clients communicate with them, and it's great, but it's only one channel, if you will. It's only voice. It only gives you the ability to react, um, verbally with people, and more and more, especially as our population ages and the younger crowd begins to do a lot of the business aspects, um, they want to communicate a little bit different way. And and now you've got to look at how do we communicate? How should we be communicating with our clients to be able to reach them and them to reach us? Um, Spencer, you've been in this business a lot longer than I have, and you've kind of seen that business change drastically for many of us over the years. Talk about where you think kind of people are maybe coming from, the tradition, and talk a little bit about what some of the possibilities are of communication.
I think the reason so many, well, not so many, but the reason people that are still on what I like to call premise-based phone systems, the reason is just because that's what they've always been on.
Hmm.
Um, and just why change now? It's
Yep.
worked. It's worked for the last 30 years. Why do I need to change? Um, and it all depends on a lot of times on the type of business.
Yep.
Like we talked about on our last um, session, we were talking about if you were to go down, how long can you be down? How long can your company stay afloat? How much money do you lose when those type of scenarios happen? And some companies that have been on an old premise based system for a long time, that is just it's not that bad for them. But that is not the case for a lot of businesses now. You
Yeah.
can't go without phones for an hour, 2, 3 hours. In a premise based phone system, that's part of it. Is cards need to be replaced, systems need to be upgraded, and so those are some of the things that are being remedied by moving away from old premise-based systems, old
Yep.
legacy systems.
Yeah. And we were talking about it the other day. It for many people, it is a single point of failure. If you have multiple locations, it can be a single point of failure that affects more than one location or an entire company, multiple sites, if they're all tied together in the background. Um, you mentioned having hardware in the IT closet or in the server room. That hardware is prone to failure. We were talking about it the other day as it affects our businesses, the technical expertise to work on those platforms. Number one, they do need to be trained and well versed in it. But number two, those expert people, technicians, are getting harder and harder to find. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We had a situation recently where a customer is upgrading their system. One of the main reasons they upgraded their system is because it took them over 2 weeks to get a technician on site on an old legacy system. There are no more technicians in this area
Yeah.
that are still employed. And so, luckily, they were able to find a retired gentleman who was able to string them along until they needed. But that was the final straw for that customer saying, "Okay, we have to do something." So the picture is you've got products that are no longer being supported by a company, if they even exist. I mean, we've seen just in the last couple of years, we've seen mainstays in the industry like Toshiba, Panasonic. We did Panasonic, Samsung, Mitel. A lot of organizations have completely stopped working in that space and closed their doors or sold off their assets to another organization. Or in the case of Mitel and Avaya, have garnered relationships with well-established UCaaS platforms. And so it's an ever-evolving ecosystem, but what it ends up being, you just have a paperweight because there's no way of getting it replaced, no way of getting it supported.
Yep. Yep. And the kind of the life in the day of many businesses with a premise-based phone system. Call comes in, call needs to be transferred. You transfer that to the appropriate person. If that person's at their desk, they can receive that call. If they're not at their desk, it goes to voicemail, kicks back to the receptionist. Um, not necessarily the most efficient way to try to communicate, as many people are now mobile. Um, Many people are not at their desk as much as they used to be. Some don't even have a desk anymore, as we've discussed. As our workforce is now more mobile than anything else. So, again, a lot of those calls just kind of dead end in somebody's voicemail. And then you've got to, inefficiently kind of turn around and try to reach that person back at some later time. Um, it's just not the most efficient way that business can be productive today. And we talked a little bit about the multiple channels, the ways people want to communicate. Let's talk about some of those ways that now can be built into the newer solutions out there. Mac, why don't you kind of talk about different channels of communication?
Well, I'll kind of pitch it back to you because what do you always complain about with my generation?
You would rather text than talk on the phone.
You'd rather text instead of talk on the phone.
Yeah,
Spencer adheres to the more if we're texting more than twice, call me.
yeah,
Um, but a lot of times that is true. Whether it's a generational thing or whether it's personal preference, the fact of the matter is, yes, more people are wanting to move to a form of texting, whether it's web chat or SMS,
yeah.
to reach somebody. But how do you as an organization do that? Okay, well, now I've got to have my office manager's cell phone to start texting people, and that's her
Mhm.
personal number, and then their number's out, or I'll go get a Google Voice number, and okay, well, that's tied to this person's Google account, and not so there's still a lot of pain that can be developed through putting in a piecemeal type solution instead of a unified platform.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and again, voice versus written, some form of written communication, texting, email. Of course, I have people now tell me Don't send me an email if you want me.
Hmm.
If you need something, send me a text. If you want to communicate with me, in a rather quick method, text me. Don't
Hmm.
email, because people don't check their emails like they used to. Um, but what it's all about is offering a consolidated communication platform that has those multiple channels available to it, whether it be internal chat with the office, which how much we've adopted that over the last 4 years.
Hmm.
We probably do 50% of our communication internally via internal chat.
Absolutely. That it kind of taught us a little bit of that during the pandemic, but I'll let Spencer speak to that about how much we've increased our communications via chat internally with our platform.
Oh yeah, like you said, just the ease of doing it. Before when we were on a premise-based system, the only way to communicate was to actually pick the phone up and call,
Right.
um, or to send an email and hope that they read that email. But just like we're on this video right now, if I wanted to, I could be responding at the same time to a question one of my texts is asking,
Right.
instead of them trying to wait around, 30, 20 minutes for me to get off a call or a video chat. So we use it constantly now. So much so, like you said, it wasn't until you just said that I realized just how much we do use it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And again, look at the productivity gain that allows you to be able to do, to be on a call, occasionally looking at email and responding to somebody who might need an immediate response from you
Mm-hmm.
via some other channel of communication. Again, makes you more productive, makes you more efficient. There's just, you can do more things. You can do more things at once, and that's what people are used to doing now.
And I
Multi,
will add, it's not that premise-based systems couldn't do some of these things.
right,
Hmm.
These were just things that were overlaid on top, and someone had to go set them up.
yeah,
And as things change, they got to be reset up, they got to be reconfigured. Whereas now with UCaaS and hosted VoIP, these are things that are just there out of the box. There's
hmm,
nothing to set up; they're just there. And
yep,
so that it's just the ease of rolling it out
yep.
and keeping it going.
And
Um,
maintaining it, and doing self-maintenance. Now you can control that in your office with a little bit of training. You can pretty much
yeah,
maintain your
correct.
systems.
It's kind of like you said before. I've always said this: no one's teaching phone guys. There's no
Hmm.
class that you can go to and learn how to be a phone guy.
Right.
You learn through experience. You learn from on-the-job training. Well, UCAS has kind of eliminated the need for the typical phone guy, phone technician, because
Right.
anybody can learn this now.
Yeah.
It's funny you bring that up, Spencer. We'll tell the listeners and watchers this, but we actually helped a local community college develop. Spencer led that program. We developed a course at Bossier Parish Community College, my alma mater, and they kind of only do it once a year now because there's not as much need for it anymore. And I've worked with that professor to kind of adapt it a little bit more into UCAS, but it's not as pertinent as it was when we helped develop it those many years ago, because the self-management by either admin staff or individual users is so much easier than it used to be. You don't have to have a certification in a coding program to do it these days.
Yeah. And that also brings into it that how is this medium delivered, right? Where traditional phone-based systems either relied on um, traditional telephone lines, which are run over copper,
Mm.
right? That is
Mhm.
a technology that, Mac, would you say the other day, has doubled, quadrupled in cost from some carriers?
It
It's
yes, it
and it's just dying. They just don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Um,
yeah,
I
absolutely.
my 80-year-old dad lives in Houston. We just had a conversation last week where he says AT&T is calling him every day, asking him, why don't you try this? Why don't you get fiber? They're wanting them to get off of those copper lines.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and he's like I said, he's my lines work just fine, but they don't. They echo. They do this and that.
Hmm.
It's just kind of
Those
move to something.
those carriers are facing the same exact problems that we are today, in the fact that having technicians dedicated to that older technology is just not cost effective anymore. And so you don't find copper technicians anymore. You may
Yeah.
have one that cover an entire region. In fact, that's the case with some providers locally. There's one that covers the entire northwest of Louisiana,
Mhm.
and he stays busy, and it can take weeks to get a resolution.
Yeah.
Whereas you can still get a we call it POTS, but you can get a POTS line over fiber. And so the companies are now incentivizing you to do that. But until then, you're right, your prices are going to double, triple, quadruple until they finally just cut you off.
Yeah. And even if you're not using those traditional phone lines, right, there are other options out there. You could get your voice delivered over your internet provider before, but it took an add-on piece to do that. It took another piece of hardware to make that happen, where these newer platforms simply operate out of the box, plug them into your internet source, and you literally can call anywhere in the practically in the world and receive
Mm-hmm.
calls. And on top of that, then you've got these other channels of communication that are, as Spencer said, they're just built into the system. They're out of the
Mm-hmm.
box. They're part of it. And it's just kind of built in there. So, um,
And
so it,
no more long distance charges, things like that.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that's another big one, right? It includes long distance at no charge. It
We even
eliminates
have
other costs.
we even have some carriers that specialize in international. So depending on the package you pick, you can get more and more countries. The system we use internally does that, and depending on which license, you can have more countries. So as we continue being more of a connected world, sometimes having a plan that adds international dialing at no cost can be the most cost-effective thing for your organization.
Yep. And that I talk to people all the time, and it is a matter of uh, modifying your business, morphing your business into a more diverse communication stream so that you can now communicate with people the way they choose to communicate in the most efficient and productive way for them and for you. How can I best serve my clients and my customers? It's not always by just giving them a toll-free number, right?
Yeah.
Which again, that's another dying need is, nobody cares whether you have a toll-free number anymore. Calls are, for the most part, long distance is free on those. So,
Mm-hmm.
I,
so go
to,
ahead,
to,
Spin.
to me, I was going to add another benefit of moving to the cloud, UCaaS and hosted voice is just all around mobility. And like Mike brought it up before the pandemic, there was some of those stubborn customers we had that just didn't want to see it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I'm not changing systems, and when that happened and people were first forced to go home, now they go, well, how can I get a phone at my house? Well, you
Yeah,
can't with what you have. But if we would have transitioned you, now we just take the phone home. As long as we got a way to power that phone, we're good. Phone and
Or
internet connection.
or the way to get you connected was opening up your network to vulnerability. And some
Exactly.
companies chose to do that, but again, with the caveat, you're opening up your network vulnerabilities way more than you should.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Talk a little bit about too we haven't really gone deep into the technology and don't plan on doing that necessarily today, but talk a little bit more about the use of cell phones. Mac, you kind of alluded to it earlier that I can text or so many businesses have simply adopted. I just make all my business calls on my
Hmm.
personal cell phone. Talk about the inefficiencies, the dangers sometime of doing
Mhm.
it, or the security, that kind of chat a little bit about that.
There's a few different pitfalls with that. Again, you have the issue of, well, now you have somebody's phone number instead
Hmm.
of having the business number. You now have somebody's phone number, and you're going to go to that person. You're not going to go through the proper channels. Um, if you have technology wise, if you have an app that does those things, you can set all sorts of out of office notifications, times. There's a lot of control you have over it. Some suppliers are now even integrating natively to the carriers. So
Mhm.
for an end user, they're not using an app on a phone, they're just using their phone. But the
Yeah.
call still looks like it's coming from the business. And on the back end, the company still have the analytics. They know how many calls they're making, who they're calling. They have all the analytics needed. Um, but it provides for a more mobile workforce.
Well, and you control that again, right? And that's what I number of businesses I've visited with just in the last month where, yeah, we just using our personal cell numbers. Well, when that employee that's doing that leaves, they're
Hmm.
still going to be getting your business calls no matter where they are. And if they're at a competitor, now they're, potentially stealing their customers. Um, uh, and it does. And then the business has no visibility into those numbers that are called, how many calls, the text messages. If you don't have a copy of that text message to refer back to, you don't know what was said or
No.
promised.
And let's think about this. And I know we're getting close on time, but don't even think about it from a perspective of employee to end user customer relation. Think about it if an employee is working in a banking app. Nowadays with two-factor authentication, the bank may send that person a text message.
Mhm.
So if a person leaves an organization and their cell phone was tied
Hmm.
to any number of multi-factor authentication, it could be banking, it could be your CRM, it could be your Comcast, or suddenly it could be your internet,
Yeah.
it could be literally anything. 2FA is so predominant now, which is fantastic from a security perspective. But if it's not implemented correctly and people have it tied to their personal cell phones and that person leaves, one, act of Congress to get it changed. Two, that person still has the back door into your organization.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Still
that's
has a
something to think about too. It's not just working with your customers, it's how are you operating your business internally.
yeah. It's about gaining control, keeping control of
Hmm.
that communications. And again, now that now that all these are being built into this system or these platforms that we call unified communications, um, you can now gain that access back. And you're probably going to have to, put some company policies in place about restricting the use of personal cell phones to communicate with your clients. I have seen that in several cases where they have adopted that. Um, so and again, just the flexibility that it builds in for not only the channels of communication, but being able to reach people at the appropriate time to conduct business. And that's
Hmm.
really what it all boils down to is how
Mhm.
do we make you more productive, more efficient? How do we increase your revenue by the fact that communications happen in a timely manner? Um, so often it's just that one phone call that, seals the deal, closes the deal, makes the sale, makes the customer happy that they actually reached the person they were trying to, right? Um, so, um, all right, we've talked a little bit about this. I'll let you guys talk a little bit about what can we do to help people to modify, to morph into these newer platforms. Max Spencer.
Well, I was just going to say, I was about to jump into that, and I was going to say, what I'd like to tell our customers as I go see them is, are you certain that you have a backup plan if that phone system fails? And some of these are old, so it's not
Yep.
if they fail, it's when they fail.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, the support from the providers and the manufacturers of those phone systems is not what it used to be.
Yep.
So your support 5 years ago may have been great, and maybe you think it is now, and it may not be. And so if you're our customer, great, come talk to us. If you whoever your phone provider is, go talk to them and find out what is your plan for if that card crashes, if that system crashes for one of my, like you said, multi-site places. All the sites may be tied to one site. That site crashes, everything crashes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
and so not only find out what is that plan, what do we do if that happens. Also, go find out what the solutions are you could have in place. What are your UCAS solutions?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think a lot of people will be surprised that it's not as bad as you may think it is going to be. Um, just find out. Just get the information.
Yep,
Sure.
Mark, you talk about call to action. That's typically where we start with a lot of companies because Spencer brought the point up. Some companies think, oh, that's going to be too expensive. That's not in the budget. You'd
Mm-hmm.
be surprised based on what you're paying for legacy services compared to what some of the UCaaS platforms cost today. You'd be very surprised. It can be more economical than you imagine from a cost perspective, but 1,000% from a value perspective.
Okay.
And our typical call to action is let us review your bill copies and we go over it and paint the picture for you to say this is where you are today, this is where you can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Spencer said, it's just start the conversation. We'd love to have that conversation and just sit down and talk to you about the options. We have literally at our disposal, we have hundreds of providers. Any of them that you're going to look up and Google and have access to, we know those providers. We have relationships with those providers. Let us help you figure out what your needs are, what your best solutions are, present you maybe with multiple options, and help you know that you're going to pivot and transition to the best solution.
If
And you know,
if you haven't started looking at other options and other avenues, you will.
yep.
You will.
There's no way around it.
Yep,
There's
absolutely.
no way around it. You will. It's coming.
And
And
it's
so
and it's not it's not in the past as it used to be where it was a large investment that you had to look at a long payout period. These are fairly short-term agreements, 2 to 5 years, whatever you choose, but it gives you flexibility and options down the road because things are going to continue to change. Your needs are
Hmm.
going to change in the next few years. So those options stay open to you rather than, committing a large amount of money. So no, this has been fun. Yeah, we talk to people about this every day. It's a great conversation to have, and we have helped a lot of businesses move from one platform to another. And no, you guys have been great. Taught me the business, and I enjoy going and talking to folks about it. So, anything to wrap up here, Mac, Spencer?
We could talk way longer about it because this is one of our passions. Spencer and I have been
Yes.
doing phones for well over a decade, and it's easy for us to get pretty long-winded. In fact, Spencer, I think, is 15, making 15 years this year.
Yeah.
So it's
yeah,
oh 09, yeah. So it's been a
just,
while. So
just made it.
it's it's in our blood. But we're not just the phone guys anymore. There's so many things we can talk about. That's just a single piece of the puzzle that we like to solve for
Yeah.
our customers' businesses.
Yeah. This is just a good place to start. Let's have a conversation.
Yep,
All right.
absolutely.
Appreciate it, guys. We'll see you next month.
Thank you, team.